with poison in it, I think. With poison in it. But attractive to the eye.
It doesn't look as evil as it is, I guess I would say.
Welcome to Second Earth Alternative. This is Felipe Osario. So we have a very exciting episode, and boy, do I feel bad for Bernie Sanders. Do I think Bernie Sanders would have necessarily done well during the coronavirus outbreak? No, absolutely not. But I do feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for the way that the establishment has been essentially playing low, kind of quietly, hiding, and then literally like one day before, they all coalesce. Everybody in the Democratic Party coalesce together to go for a guy who is essentially has dementia. So you got to think like that's like rigged, right? Isn't that what it means to rig something? That, you're supposed to have 9 or 10 candidates. It's supposed to be, a battle 1-for-1 against all. But then at the end of it, just like the other elections where every single senator and every single congressman ended up endorsing Hillary Clinton, well, you got the Clintonites back. You accept that this time it's being headed by Biden. So you got to wonder, how does a guy who essentially has created an international Ponzi scheme, is corrupt to the tunes of tens and tens of millions of dollars for his son, with Burisma and these international companies. So it's not even that. You then got him representing everything that represents the Clintonites, the Clintons, so to speak. And these are just warmongering candidates. These are people who are wanting the military-industrial complex to stay creating these big government contracts for these companies that can't be challenged, because that's the nature of having these government contracts. So then when these companies get big enough, and let's say the technology is suddenly shifting, they're like, no, we're not letting the technology shift. We are the big contractors. We're the big companies. So we're going to just do whatever it takes. Companies are like people. They don't like to die. We're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we keep this racket going, that we keep this money machine going, that we keep going to war, that we keep selling weapons, to make sure that the ones that are being contracted by the government keeps getting contracted by the government. So, when you're talking about the death of a company, there is no rules. They'll pull whatever it takes, all the dirty tricks. And I thought the dirty trick of this election was having 9 or 10 candidates, and you just didn't know the whole time that 9 out of 10 of them were all in the same frickin' team, including, might I add, Snake Lizard Bith Warren. Let's put it this way: when you lie about your heritage to get into college, and then you make an entire political career to champion minorities, that's pretty bad, man. It's like you just become an absolute hypocrite when you do that. Like I said, I really feel sorry for Bernie. I think that the guy is way too nice. It's understandable to try to bring your ethics into your politics to make sure that you don't cut corners. That's the nature of having integrity. But the issue is that, things are all layered in contexts. And the context for Bernie Sanders was that he should have been ethical with his way of how he wants to run the country, but you can't bring the same level of ethics to the quote-unquote game of politics, because let me tell you, when you got 9 out of 10 candidates who are secretly against you, there's no way you're going to win the nomination saying, they're my friends. No, you have to play to a certain level, to the same level as them. Otherwise, it's just dust in the wind. Dust in the wind. There's no conceivable manner to which you can challenge your opponents when your opponents are literally pulling the gloves out and hitting you while you're not even looking. So, do I feel sorry for Bernie? Yeah, I do. But like I said, I don't know if he would have handled this coronavirus very well, because he wanted to keep the borders open. So today's kind of like a 2-part series. I wanted to kind of showcase some interesting articles regarding the coronavirus. In the second part, I'm going to go over some alien evidence, something that I've been meaning to do, but just honestly, just so much has been going on in the world. It's hard to kind of keep track of everything, from diseases to the politics to, now we're going to talk about aliens. But before we get to that, I wanted to show you some really interesting articles regarding prophecies about coronavirus. I know this sounds kind of crazy. I don't know if you've heard about this regarding the COVID-19 strain, but check out this article from the Daily Star. Bible prophecy shows coronavirus will be biggest disaster in centuries, claims rabbi. So according to this rabbi, he is claiming that there are certain biblical passages in the book of Ezekiel that seems to reference the concept of China being taken over by some kind of plague. So as it reads here, a Bible prophecy shows that coronavirus outbreak will plunge the world into its toughest periods for hundreds of years, a rabbi has claimed. Rabbi Yosef Pinto, a respected Israeli mystic, has claimed the coming of the killer respiratory disease was predicted in the book of Ezekiel in the Hebrew Bible. He initially announced to the world he had a vision of a coming global catastrophe back in January. Just days later, the coronavirus began to take hold in China before spreading around the world, infecting nearly 72,000 and killing more than 1,700. Now, he has claimed the prophecy was indeed the outbreak of the coronavirus and that such a plague of biblical proportions was foretold in the Holy Book. The scholar, who now lives in Morocco, warned the catastrophe could be even bigger than the Holocaust and urged people to pray and repent. And in further biblical foreshadowing, as Chinese battles the coronavirus, it has now been hit by locust plague spreading from Africa. Confirming his vision, Rabbi Pinto said, "We must be prepared. What is happening in China is developing into a global catastrophe, and the consequences will reach almost all corners of the world. This will soon become clear to all. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm only coming to tell the truth." So what I thought was kind of interesting about this article, usually I'm not prone to believing any random medicine man, so to speak, who just comes out and says, "Hey, I have a prophecy." There has to either be a history of getting things right, or, you just got to give me a little bit more than that. I'm not the type of person to just fall into somebody's random conjuring of their imagination. I thought the most interesting part of this article was right up here, and it says, "In the further biblical foreshadowing, as China battles the coronavirus, it has now been hit by locust plague spreading from Africa." Coronavirus plague predicted for 2020 by Buddhist monk 100 years ago. Ancient Internal Bible. Now, I have no idea what that means. I actually did a Bing search, and I can't find anything on Ancient Internal Bible what that means. So if anybody knows what that means, please let me know. But I'll just continue reading. Ancient Internal Bible noticed a passage by a Buddhist monk predicted horrific happenings in China in the year 2020. Another coincidence? Or is that country in the midst of the year all China will weep? The year 2020, the year of all China will weep. The omens will be so bad that the new year will not be celebrated. Well, that certainly happened. Quote, "Then the plague will come. It will come with a fury. The tigers and the wolves will hide in the mountains. The plague will encompass all the land and will eventually spread to the whole world. Very soon, rice will become so expensive that no one can eat. Then the rivers will sink all the boats. People in that year will only be able to harvest rice in the very early spring. There will be no harvest of late season rice, beans, wheat, and oats because vast clouds of locusts will lay waste to the entire countryside." And now you see why I'm showing you this, because we have two different prophecies. And like I said, I'm not the type of person to just believe in the random conjurings of random people's imaginations. But when you have two different prophecies, one by a rabbi from the Jewish tradition, another one from supposedly a monk, though I have to double check whether these sources are correct. Like I told you, I never heard of Ancient Internal Bible. But if this ends up being correct, it certainly is shocking that this prophecy would be mentioning locusts 100 years ago. So it's not only talking about a disease, but it's talking about an actual army of locusts that's coming down and essentially destroying the countryside. As of 12 days ago, China to deploy army of 100,000 ducks to fight locusts in Pakistan, because the locusts are moving from west to east and will eventually hit China. So what is this? I'm not the one who believes in crazy coincidences either. So now I'm split between two prophecies that sound eerily similar to one another from completely different traditions, and this unbelievable coincidence that just as the prophecy talks about locusts, a cloud of locusts coming down and laying waste to the entire countryside, not does China have an unprecedented coronavirus outbreak, it's also having a locust issue. And look, I don't want to scare anybody. I just want to present the information. You know, this channel talks about eclectic information, which this is one of them. So, like I said, I'm not trying to scare you guys. I just want to show you what is out there. And, you know, one question that I really have, and I really want to know is, if this prophecy is real, is this something that's going to mostly affect China? Or is the whole world going to essentially fall into a state of starvation if it were to play out just like the prophecy is saying, where there's the famine, there is a disease that may or may not kill more people than it's currently showing, and then a huge storm of insects to get rid of the remaining food that we had left after this disastrous pandemic, outbreak, plague, whatever you want to call it. So please leave your thoughts and comments below. You know, I'm kind of alone doing this channel, so it's always nice to get people's feedbacks. And, you know, this is a community of individuals. Definitely 100,000 minds are much better than one. So if anybody has information about these topics, anybody want to share anything, by all means, please comment. You know, if it's a very informative comment, I'm actually thinking of starting to create a segment where I start kind of giving people's commentaries on at the end of the episode, just to kind of create a filler and give varying opinions about the subjects to which we're discussing. Anyways, that is part 1 of this episode. Please join me for part 2, where we will be discussing some UFOs, not just from one individual, from multiple individuals, one of them who was a claimed alien abduction victim who we reported on earlier. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you click here for part 2. This is Felipe Osorio, signing out.